I don't want to talk about the psychology of Franco, I want to talk about the psychology of Franco's followers, because why are you, as a hardened mobster, swearing your allegiance to this unwashed, milk-obsessed, pacifier-sucking, self-infantilizing, 50-looking 24-year-old who spends his free time crawling into the abdomens of the prostitutes he murders so that he can burst out of them and thereby fulfill his fantasy of pretending that he was their little baby boy that they just gave birth to? Actually, this is misleading. We don't have to worry about this because Franco's only followers are the deeply traumatized ex-pop who are forced to play subordinate to him. In the outside world, in his past, it doesn't sound like Franco actually had any followers. From what we know, Franco was a follower. His role in the mob, the Martino crime family, was only that of a hired killer for his father, Salvatore Barbi, who was the real mob boss. I think this is a distinction that a lot of lore enthusiasts aren't aware of. I wasn't either until I started to research Franco's backstory more carefully. It's tricky because we see Franco acting as the big deal mob boss within the trials, but this is just him living out a long-held fantasy, as I'll talk more about later. For now, let's get us all up to speed. There's lots of other videos on YouTube which give a much more detailed account of Franco's background, but here I'm going to speedrun it so that we only have the most necessary details. So Franco Barbi, born in New Orleans to head of the mob Salvatore Barbi, as I just mentioned, and to a nameless mother who inexplicably died and who Franco never met. Franco was born with cranial birth defects. His appearance has been likened to those born with Pfeiffer's syndrome. At first, it was only a theory that Sally killed Franco's birth mother, but then in a primetime voice line, Franco confirmed that this was the case.
My father killed my mother. You know that? Doctors?
Sally probably wanted someone to blame for Franco's birth defects, and it couldn't be Sally's own sperm that sucked, so he had to pull the exorcide card. Throughout his childhood, Franco was raised by 3 different stepmothers. His father kept cycling through wives like that. It wasn't polygamy, it was either him getting bored of his wives or disposing of them or both. Roughly around the age of 12 is when Franco committed his first murder. The in-game documents say 12, the comics say 10, so there's some discrepancy in the storytelling within the storytelling, which is very flavorful and I appreciate it. Anyway, he used his dad's shotgun to blast a fellow who owed his dad money. The recoil from the gun messed up Franco's head and face, and remember he's already got the cranial birth defects, so this is doing him very few favors. But this marks the very first time in Franco's life where he made his dad proud. It's from this point on when Franco became one of his dad's goons. He went around threatening people and collecting debts and doing mobster stuff generally, but it did not last long because Franco went and engaged in the business of the clouds and the rain with his 4th stepmother, because he was an enormous fan of the way she humiliated him. Understandably, this made Franco's dad very angry. He took it upon himself to exacerbate Franco's pre-existing cranial deformities for the 2nd time, and then he banished his son to Miami. But this wasn't the only reason. See, as mobsters tend to do, Franco had been very much inclined to go around and hire a bunch of prostitutes to enjoy himself in that sort of manner, but like me playing Irelia, it turned out he was constantly unable to perform. He was very insecure about this. It bothered him deeply. It strongly suggested he ended up killing a lot of the women he hired, just out of pure childish rage. Because Franco was so unable to control his temper, he was always killing indiscriminately and unpredictably. His victims were not only women. Of course, a mobster is at their most useful when they are violent and dangerous, but Franco went so far with it that it was giving his father a lot of trouble. So it was this, combined with the stepmother incident, which caused Franco's dad to send him away to Miami, where Franco ended up partnering with the CIA to go on a bunch of anti-revolutionary raids, Cold War stuff, stopping the spread of communism, not super relevant for our conversation today. Well, the CIA also deemed Franco to be way too much of a wild card, and eventually they stopped employing his services as well. Now, it was just before Franco was expelled from the CIA operations that one of his signature killing sprees caught Murkoff's attention. Clyde Perry was sent to track Franco down, and the two of them got in that pregnancy scuffle I mentioned earlier, and as is tradition, that was the moment Clyde decided that Franco is so charismatic and an excellent candidate for prime asset within the Outlast trials. Also, with keeping in tradition, we don't know the circumstances surrounding Franco's capture and recruitment, and that's that. When discussing the psychology of such a disturbed, murderous fellow, where do we even begin? How about the major aspect of Franco's character, which is not covered in this background introduction, and which most of you are probably rubbing your hands with glee in anticipation for, you weirdos? Franco likes to roleplay as a baby, and this roleplaying comes with all the associated baby-like effects. Franco cries like a baby, makes reference to his baby-like proportions, drinks milk, sucks on a pacifier, pleads for mommy to come care for him. A select few theorizers will argue that Franco will take pleasure in the exhibition of his fecal and urinary incontinence, so...
Wah! 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 Wah!
brother, what are we doing? I don't think anyone will deny that this behavior is clearly sexual in nature, but what is in contention is why this is what he likes. And this is an age-old question that can basically apply to any special interest. I feel like I'm opening up a whole other universe of worms, but this is a big enough aspect of Franco's character that I think it's worth delving into just a little bit. Why, in general, do weird people like what they like? There's a lot of competing answers out there, but the narrative of the Outlast trials seems to subscribe to the theory of environmental influence, particularly traumatic ones. Franco grew up without his birth mother. I think it's not a stretch to say that he lacked sufficient care or attention from any motherly figure. This would have been terrible for Franco's sense of healthy attachment, which, to explain in simple terms, describes how safe, how comfortable, and how secure an infant can feel in the knowledge that they are loved, they are protected, and they are cared for. Without this fundamental sense of safety in one's surroundings, a person can get pretty messed up psychologically, and a ton of the studies in the past few decades overwhelmingly support the notion that the development of insecure attachments in one's infancy can have lifelong negative impacts on all their relationships with other people. From what I learned in my undergrad, this was largely studied in the context of romantic and sexual relationships. This damage can be undone and this insecurity unlearned through therapy and through many other means, but I think from Franco's backstory, we can plainly see this did not happen for him. We might then say that because Franco's desire for motherly love was never satisfied in his infancy, that even now as a fully grown man, he has never stopped seeking it. And this initially healthy, psychonormative desire eventually transformed, or perverted, if you will, to become sexually charged. This is a very Freudian interpretation, Oedipus complex and all that. It's this idea of unsatisfied desires, the prolonged search for the specific form of love you never received or resolved in your youth. What you never had is that which you most desperately seek.
I f***ed your mother! I f***ed all your mothers!
It's especially pertinent with Franco because part of Freud's original argument for the Oedipus complex is that the son is in competition with his father for the love of his mother. Remember Sally's response to Franco's extracurriculars? Franco has a complicated relationship with his dad, and it's one which is comparable to gooseberries. It's this contradictory mix of admiration, idolization, resentment, and hatred. Like with many backstories of the characters in the game, we're left to fill in a lot of blanks with Franco, but it's in these blanks where a lot of the most important information shines through. Us being told that Franco, at age 10, shooting a man in the face and killing him was the first time he made his father genuinely proud also tells us everything we need to know about how Franco's dad treated him prior to that one incident. Because what are we really saying here? That it took going so far as to commit literal murder for Franco to finally win his father's love and approval. And I use the word finally because even though we are told zero about Franco's life between his birth and the age of 10, we can rightfully and confidently imagine that Franco must have had a years-long history of trying and failing to impress his dad in whatever ways he could think of. Because a normal kid doesn't go straight to thinking, oh, if I kill this guy who owed my dad money, that'll do it. Sally must have been neglectful towards, disapproving of, and overall unhappy with his son's very existence, and that must have kept Franco chasing his dad's approval harder and harder to the point where he ended with the extreme of murder. So with this extreme denial of love and care, this goes back to the baby play thing. Franco might find it more reassuring than anything else to be babied by a woman he loves, because that serves as the ultimate indication that he is worthy of being cared for after all. We can speculate further, because when it comes to these sorts of things, you'll rarely settle for any one answer as the true, most satisfying or most conclusive one. There is a range of possibilities, and multiple things can be true at once. So if you don't mind getting pretentious with me and adding some socio-cultural flavor to the conversation, think about how, especially in the 1960s, an adult male is not shamed, but seen as successful when he is babied by the women in his life. It's the patriarchal notion that a woman, whether a mother or a sister or even a daughter, is the one who must carry out all the cooking, cleaning, shopping, and housework otherwise. Like, okay, you want me to change your diaper while we're at it? Franco says, yes please. So I wonder if his fixations are just an exaggeration of this gendered dynamic. Part of the idea is supposed to be that a man in his default state is so great and cool and important that a woman can't help but be overjoyed to do all his chores for him, no matter how nasty. Franco might find that kind of devotion incredibly alluring. Just on a practical level, it's appealing, because it means he never has to lift a finger in his entire life, everything will get done for him. Did you know that bunnies express and perceive dominance via the reception of grooming? You're petting the bunny because you think it's this adorable, fluffy little thing, but in its worldview, you are subservient. You fool, you sucker. Franco's voice actor portrayed Buster Baxter on the children's television show, Arthur. The past is changeable, the future is set. I just wish NA's past didn't feature Bwipo's set.
Do you hate us, God? Do you hate this world?
If we're still thinking along the lines of wish fulfillment, you might instead wonder if Franco is simply tired. What he might want most is to relinquish control and allow his romantic or sexual partner to take the lead. Because, as we just discussed, Franco had to fight so hard for a single drop of his father's affection. This probably warped his perception of the world so that he thinks it's normal that he had to go through all that effort for the simple outcome of receiving love. So he dreams, he imagines, he fantasizes. Why couldn't things just be different?
All I want is a hug. Just one hug.
I think it's only natural that Franco would want to be cared for without having to strain and exert himself, without having to put in any effort from his end whatsoever. But who in this world, in this harsh reality, would ever be on the receiving end of so much generous, constant, unconditional, and over-the-top care? Babies. This might explain why Franco not only does the baby thing, he does the misbehaving baby thing as an added bonus.
Where are you, Mommy? Oh, baby's cold, and baby's bad.
He's posing a question. If he acts out, throwing his tantrums and making a mess of everything, will mommy still love him? This is a stress test. He wants to make absolutely sure the answer is yes, always yes, no matter what. And then, I'm afraid there's the whole humiliation deal, which I cannot ignore. I mean, I don't really want to analyze this, but the humiliation thing is, by all accounts, what actually does it for Franco. I'm here talking about love and care and affection, and Franco might come and watch this video and laugh at me. The guy openly wants to be humiliated. It's the only thing that really gets him going. What can we come up with here? I think maybe Franco finds humiliation arousing by association. Because you think about a baby being helpless and having everything done for them by others, being bathed and fed and changed. This is as expected for a baby, but if an adult has to go through this, it's humiliating. And Franco is an adult. A girl's gonna ask him, what's wrong with you? You want me to choo-choo train the applesauce into your open mouth? Are you a baby? And Franco's not going to be ashamed, he's going to be into it, because the humiliation, it comes with the territory, as they say. If not this, then it could be a dominance thing, a trust thing. If someone is in a position to humiliate you, it must mean that they know what they're doing. Almost by default, it means they've got power, knowledge, experience, status. For Franco to want to willingly give himself over to that sort of person would reveal that he is looking for someone to follow and to trust wholeheartedly. Is that not a major role of the parental figure? Why are you listening to me talk about this? It's over. Let's go back to Franco's village and origin moment. Earlier, I'd said that Franco's first kill was indicative of a powerful desire to make his father proud. You might disagree. You might be asking, again? This was already Gooseberry's deal. It can't be Franco's deal as well. A bit boring, isn't it? So I struggled with this too. I looked for other explanations. Maybe instead you want to say that Franco never was a normal kid to begin with. He just so happened to be a born psychopath, predisposed to murder and violence, and it's as simple as that. But I think that's a bit of a flimsy argument, especially considering that Outlast storytelling consistently provides concrete motivations and explanations for their characters' desires and neuroses respectively. We don't have anyone who just happens to be born evil. Now, if you want to ask why Franco would have had such a strong desire to win his dad over, we can and will look at the same kind of reasoning held by young Gooseberry, or Phyllis if you prefer. If you want to get in Franco's head, you need to imagine your dad as this really big, important mob boss. He is the symbol of power and success and sex and wealth. He can get anything he wants, he can make anyone and everyone adhere to his every whim, and those who don't are doomed to die a terrible death. It's among the Barbies, it's real greaseball shit. In that era and in this culture, this is the perceived ideal, the peak of everything a man should be. Of course Franco would want to live up to his father's wishes and make him proud. It's a desire that persists even into Franco's adulthood.
What do you think, Dad? You see what I did to those snitches? Won't try that shit twice. You know who my f***ing dad is? You know what he does to people?
But while Franco and Phyllis share the same kind of admiration for their fathers, one big difference lies in the kind of public image their respective fathers put on. Phyllis's dad was a horrible person, of course, but at least he took an honest and innocent profession in dentistry. Franco's dad, while incredibly successful, is the sleaziest kind of criminal you can imagine. Racketeering and bribery and drug deals and murder and torture. Sally, you're not having a very positive influence on your son's aspirations and worldviews. Because think about what the age 10 incident teaches Franco going forward. He learns that violence is the answer. There is immediate, maximally positive feedback that what Franco has done is a good thing. He should do more of it. And from what we learned from his backstory from that point on, he certainly did. First because Sally appointed Franco as a hired gun, but then because Franco got extracurricular, as the comics describe it. The way Franco sees it, if his dad is going to reward him for murder, then Franco should go above and beyond and do as much killing as possible. This explains all these wild, uncontrollable killing sprees. From an outsider's view, a lot of these rampaging, senseless murders are not only pointless, but detrimental to the mob's cause. But Franco believes the more the merrier, right? Eventually he must have learned that this isn't always true, especially when it comes to his line of work, but I think by then it would have been too late. Because violence, at its core, is a habit like any other, which can be fed and practiced and learned. That's why it's funny how people and pop psychology often mistake Freud's notion of catharsis when it comes to healthy expressions of anger. When Freud introduced his idea of catharsis, all he was really referring to was the release of suppressed emotions, specifically in the psychoanalytic setting. Talk about your trauma, have a good cry, that's therapeutic. This is a very basic and unnuanced definition, but it gives you the general idea. Except, I think it is that very lack of nuance which led people to take this idea and extrapolate it to mistakenly believe that if you're angry and frustrated, you should punch something or yell and scream. That's releasing the anger, and that is good because you're not bottling it up. Nice, this must be cathartic. Unfortunately, this isn't how it works. Letting out your anger in a violent manner can make you less angry in the short term, but in the long term, it only makes it easier and easier to fall into the practice of throwing tantrums at whatever mild inconvenience happens to bother you. Because when you let your anger win, all you're really doing is strengthening and developing a habit. You're more or less practicing the skill of being childishly angry, and that sounds like Franco to a T. Because Franco has a bottomless well of frustration and anger from which to feed his violence. Though he loves to be babied in the bedroom, he hates being belittled and disrespected in the mobster world. And because of his birth defects, because of his inability to perform in the bedroom, we know he's been made fun of a lot. I think it also didn't help that he worked under his dad, essentially as a lowly grunt, for his entire youth. Maybe he thought it was super cool for the first couple of years, but you know, you give a mouse a cookie and he's gonna want some milk to go with it. Franco wanted to be more. He wanted to become just like his dad. Everyone wants to become their idol. That's why we see him living out this fantasy inside the trial environments. That's what Murkoff does with their prime assets. They give them this paradise where they can live out all their most gratuitous and indulgent fantasies. In the real world, Franco was never given the opportunity to be the boss, of course, because he was too wild and immature to be a good fit for any kind of leadership role. And all that did was fuel his anger, because it only became more and more apparent to him that he would never live to be as great a man or a gangster as his father. It's not just a power thing either, it's also a power thing. Can I get pretentious again? I hate to bring up this quote wrongly attributed to Oscar Wilde, but I think it's very apt when talking about Franco's character. So, classic mobster misogyny, Franco buys fully into the mindset that if you can surround yourself with a ton of women, you're winning at life. Because this is the greatest indicator of all that he is powerful. It doesn't matter how disgusting and vile he is, he's got enough money and influence to make women grit their teeth and bear it. This is another thing Franco's dad taught him, by the way. We're seeing that in a lot of ways, the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree and bruise its already damaged skull. Look at Sally, who had 4 wives, who killed Franco's birth mother, who probably visited the bar or brothel every other night and cheated on each of them. All this would have only contributed to Franco's belief in women as property, that this is what it means to be a successful and powerful man. So no wonder we're seeing all these mannequin prostitutes in Franco's trials, no wonder he's such a sex pest. But as pathetic as it sounds, Franco could never hope to be the same kind of womanizer his dad was. Because Franco is impotent, and if he's packing, it's probably all of 1 3/4 of an inch, and that's standing at attention. Many of the women whose services he has solicited have made fun of him for this. Fatal mistakes for them, but their effect on Franco has been everlasting. This is where the insecurity comes in again.
Call me impotent? Call me little? I'm a f***ing prince. You'd be so lucky.
Now, of course, we have to talk about the obvious thing. Franco's entire psychological complex when it comes to his literal manhood and his sense of masculinity in general is fully and perfectly represented by his Lupara. This is Franco's iconic weapon, sawed off the front of this beautiful shotgun, so it's much shorter than your average gun, yes? Does that make it weaker? No! This is exactly what Franco wants to say, even if he doesn't know it. Franco wants others to know that even if he's small, he's powerful. He shoots you with his Lupara, it'll still hurt and it'll still kill. Franco himself is still fertile. Or at least this is his compensatory belief. Funnily enough, even though Easterman is playing life on Permanent Bad Trip 3, he articulates well how Franco achieves power by proxy, or symbolic power, through status, through wealth. This is all Franco can fall back on when he has nothing else to furnish his own sense of self-worth. Do we want to pull back a bit? I glanced over this briefly, but you might be wondering why it would frustrate Franco to be seen as little, weak, weird, powerless, impotent. Doesn't he like to be humiliated? I think it's not actually a contradiction at all. He wants to be big and powerful on the streets and mommy's little baby in the sheets. Is this pretty common? I think it's pretty common. Like, we'll see parallels of this for other special interests. Go and have a conversation with at least one nursing major. Actually, I feel like something bad is going to happen to us if we keep talking about this. Anyways, this might actually provide our best explanation for Franco's desire to be humiliated, because in the bedroom, he's being humiliated under his terms. He's taking control of the thing that makes him feel the worst, the most powerless out in the real world. He is finding security in this haven where he doesn't have to act big and powerful all the time. He doesn't have to compete with his dad and fight tooth and nail to reach that unattainable peak of perceived masculinity, because once again, that sort of thing has to be exhausting. I want to switch trials again and talk about some missed opportunities, or at least missing information regarding Franco's backstory, because one of the initial reads I had of his character was that of a misfit who was drawn to the mob by the promise of social belonging, and of purpose, and all that sort of stuff. This read turns out to be pretty wrong. First, because Franco's something of a nepo baby, right? He wasn't drawn to join the mob from the outside, he was given a role largely because he's the son of the boss. But I think this incorrect line of thinking from me serves to highlight more truths about Franco's actual character. I say this a lot in a lot of videos, but it's a bit of a shame that we're told very, very little about Franco's actual life and experience within the mob, working as a hired killer. All we know can be summed up in one sentence: he killed people who owed his dad money, and he went a little overboard with it. But I wonder if, for instance, Franco was resented by his fellow colleagues, and if for this reason, Franco wanted to constantly prove himself and prove his worth to show people that he deserved a role in the mob for his own merits. He wanted to get out from under his father's shadow, essentially. And then I think, even if the other mobsters respected Franco as an effective killer, a lot of them would probably be put off by his misshapen head, by his bad hygiene, by his baby-like nature. Of course, the son of the boss is untouchable, and they couldn't openly make fun of him for whatever gripes they might have taken with him, but Franco would have heard the whispers behind his back, and it would have bothered him. We have some voice lines which might hint at all of this.
You try to be kind to people, and they f***ing laugh at you. Earned everything myself. None of you f***s is gonna take it away from me.
So this compounds on our current understanding of Franco, and helps us realize why he's got this big chip on his shoulder, why he's always fighting to prove himself to others, why he'd love to be in charge of everybody, put them all in their rightful place beneath him. Because not only did he have no loving mother or father, he also probably had no real friends whatsoever. All this would have fostered within him a very lone wolf, me against the world type of mentality. This is probably also why Franco is so possessive when it comes to us reagents tampering in his trials. He's always saying everything's mine, if you touch it you die. Because he feels so strongly that he has earned everything himself, and he doesn't want anyone taking that away from him. Is that all? I'm a bit disappointed. I feel like I have more to say, but also if I feel like I say more, I'm just going to be repeating the exact same ideas I've already put forth, just using different words and phrasing. I do that a lot. So I think I've gotten all my main points across. I'll share this table I created, comparing the psychologies of the three primes. I put this together to get a better idea of Franco's character. It felt like I was doing homework for the first time in 2 years, and I did this because I was daunted by the prospect of making this video from the outset. My first fear was that Franco isn't very psychologically unique compared to the first two primes I covered. But as I made this chart, and as I thought more deeply about it, the more I realized Franco really does have his own special things going on. If something's in bold in the chart, that means those traits are shared between two or more primes. So that's a nice way to break things down, I think. Another concern I had, which I touched on earlier, I also made this much simpler chart to determine whether Gooseberry and Franco have the same kind of daddy issues going on. It looks like they do, but they don't. I think the biggest difference is that Franco competes with his father, whereas Gooseberry does not. Gooseberry has no interest in that game of who can be the bigger man. Also, Franco isn't attracted to his own father the way Gooseberry is, but he might as well be. I think it's nice that we can draw on the previous psychology videos for comparisons between the primes. Coil and Franco also have some obvious similarities, but what I think is more interesting is that we can kind of look at Coil more properly like Franco's father. There's some very nice similarities between Coil and Sally if you think about it. But this was the intention after all, that Coil and Gooseberry are the archetypal parents, and Franco is the resulting very messed up progeny, this childish, entitled, angry at the world, neglected son. So it makes sense, right? You look at how messed up the parents are, you say to yourself, well, no wonder the son turned out even worse. And that's very Freudian again, I think. I always felt I should have brought up Freud in my earlier Psychology Of videos because, as I've harped on before, you'll notice the recurring trend of lousy childhoods and bad parenting in the backstories of all our prime assets. Aurora herself has something to say about it, and Aurora herself is a pot calling the kettle a victim of ACEs, or adverse childhood experiences, as they say. Freud and his ideas get clowned on a lot in our modern era. He's got his penis envies and his oral fixations and a bunch of other things that seem laughable to us nowadays, and which we probably think are more revealing of Freud than of human nature as a whole, but I think Freud was important to psychology, not only because he got a lot of people talking, but also because he popularized this one central idea, central to the field of psychology itself, which is that what happens to you in childhood affects you for the rest of your life. I think this is thematically resonant for the Outlast franchise overall, because we're beginning to see that so much of these games have to do with legacy. Maybe there's never been any happy childhoods. We have so many cases of monsters breeding monsters, sometimes literally, sometimes not. It's no great leap to say that, within the chronology of the Outlast universe, the original games themselves, Outlast 1 and 2, are the descendants, the legacy of the Outlast trials, and only now are we getting to learn why these children became so horribly twisted in the ways which we know them for today. Hello, thanks for watching. I gathered this very cool and interesting observation from Octavian a couple months ago, and I was planning on working it into this video today, but I felt that as I was putting things together, I didn't really feel like I could build off of this in any substantial way. Am I a fraud? Maybe. So this stands as a nice detail to think about on its own. There's probably a lot more symbolism built into the physical designs of all the trial environments that we've to this day left overlooked. I think that's cool. Yeah. Nice. I'm with you, William. Oh. Nice. That was awesome.
Eat away shit.
Lot of shit to show. I'm TPing back. Wait, life is good. Perform.
Yeah, Penta. Make an R.
Oh, look at him.
Oh,
it's my Penta. Kill no one right now. Kill no one right now. My TP took forever. Thank you. Oh my god.
What the fuck?
How is that a clone? Nice. I have a Penta here. Fuck me, bro. Perform ma. Perform ma. I have a Penta here. I have a Penta here. Penta here. Dearth up in 2.
I'm walking in.
Yep.
Bro.
Wait, perform? Like, well played. I can kill Ziggs too. He ulted?
Oh my
Ah,
god.
shit. Oh, you're alive on me. Nice.
Yeah.
Hello.
You auto?
Wait, I'm actually in-botting. What? Well played.
Oh my
End or no?
But Jesus.
Kill Bard or no?
Bard to dodging, bro.
He doesn't bother to dodging, bro. Stop!
English.
Bard
not
killable?
first English,
He's killable, right?
unfortunately. You got it?
Oh.
No! Okay, well played. I don't think that would killed. Well played on a shit to show.